I've won 3 times in a row, on the ladder and stuff, thousands of times. It's like 3 wins in a row. In this situation, it seems pretty brutal, but on any given day that he's playing, I'm sure, you string together that many wins. It's like, it's not impossible. It's just...
I don't think that comfort is the thing he's thinking about right now. I think he's only looking forward to what he needs to do to maximize his chance to win.
Yeah.
But you notice he's also got a Gadget Zane Auctioneer in his deck that he threw away. So maybe Gadget Zane Auctioneer is just the absolute key to winning at the games at the moment.
Who knows, man? It could be. But, looking at these opening hands, it is going to be pretty interesting to see how Savjz does play this through.
This is actually a pretty tough mulligan if you're Kungen here, because traditionally SI7 Agent isn't too good against Druid, and Backstab isn't very good either, but Backstab is a little bit worse when you don't have SI7 Agent, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So looking at this hand, you want to be digging into your deck with spells like Blood Mage and Shiv to find your Gadget Zane Auctioneer, but at the same time...
He's going to keep all 3 cards.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with it. I like it. There's a good chance this SI7 Agent gets used simply as a 3-mana 3/3, so he can start developing and hopefully get in a few points of damage and buy himself enough time to get to Gadget Zane Auctioneer.
Now, as the rogue, it seems like such a big advantage going second too, just having the coin as the extra activatable. Do you agree with that?
Right, like rogue functions fine when it's going first because it has a lot of 0-cost spells, but it functions better when it's going second because it gets a free 0-cost spell.
Yeah.
So speaking of 0-cost spells, he's now drawn both preparations, and certainly not what he wants to be seeing at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
But that Deadly Poison was a really good draw because now if something like a Chillwind Yeti comes out, he's able to kill it really easily with
double
that
deadly
Agent. Or even double Deadly Poison. I'd be very surprised if he used a poison here.
Yeah, he's just going to end the turn after that Shiv. So far, Savjz really hasn't had much he can play, and he's just going to throw down that Blood Mage, probably primarily just for the card draw.
Right, I like throwing down the Blood Mage there simply for that fact as well.
Yeah. Interesting. So he's going to be able to combo that SI Agent, take that out, and he is going to get the card draw off it. Not too bad. It looks like he's thinking about going face, but he is going to think better of that. And, still saving that coin. When do you think this coin is going to come into play? Wrath going to be able to be taken out. So do you think you coin a Cairn out next turn? Or do you think you save the coin for like the turn 6 Ancient of Lore for the card draw? Or, where are you looking to use this coin here if you're Savjz?
I think his hand right at the moment is very comfortable because he's facing down what looks like it's going to be a clear board. I think turn 5 Cairn is likely his projection because he's also got Faceless Manipulator in his hand. But more importantly, with the card draw effect, is that he's already got both of his 9s in his hand, so he doesn't really need to dig anything. But this Druid of the Claw now
really
gives him
draw.
This gives him a lot of options.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a blessing and a curse in that it gives him another option, but his play was so clean cut the way before that now he has a slight opportunity to be able to make a mistake.
Looks like he may actually silence this and then coin Hero Power. Now, how do you feel about that? It seems like a bit of a weird play to me, but he wants to deny the card draw, obviously. I guess he's really just thinking about, there's not that many cards in Kungen's hand right now. Just try to limit the card draw really heavily. It's interesting, though, that he wants to use, basically 2 cards in his hand to deal with that when he could have kind of just already put down, the Druid of the Claw, and then next turn put down the Cairn, and then he could have, put down the Ancient of Lore, and then he could have coined out Ysera or something. He had a very kind of clean mana curve there, but how do you feel about that? Do you think it's worth all of that just to basically deny that 1 card draw?
I think it's a little bit strange because the other thing you have to keep in mind when you're using this keeper is that that's the only keeper you have in your hand at the moment. So if your opponent manages to land something like a big Van Cleef, your only response to a big Van Cleef is actually a Faceless Manipulator.
Yeah.
So a little surprised by the keeper play, but the other thing he's thinking about is if my opponent hasn't played Auctioneer and started playing a lot of spells at this point, there's a good chance he just doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Because we've passed the turn 5 point for the rogue. So when he makes that play, I would venture to say what he's thinking about is how he actually denies his opponent the ability to dig for Auctioneer.
Yeah.
And that's really the only reason I can think of you would make that play instead of playing.
And honestly, it's working out. Look at Kungen's hand. It's full of spells, but he doesn't have that Auctioneer.
Right. This Cairn is a nightmare right now as well. Because not only is he going to be doing a bunch of damage, but if he wants to kill this, he's going to have to use a ton of stuff to do it.
Yeah, a lot of cards, and that's kind of weakening the Auctioneer when it does eventually come out. If you have to blow a lot of spells here as well. So there are a couple different ways that he could do this. It'll be interesting to see how he's going to go about it. He could backstab Hero Power. He could backstab, trade. Do you think you commit to just killing off both? It looks like he wants to just ignore it and try to go face. How do you feel about that?
I think that ignoring it and going for face is actually a pretty good plan, despite how grim it may look.
Yeah.
But his plan at this point is literally to begin getting lucky.
Yeah.
He understands that he's far enough behind if he ends up using a bunch of spells to kill this Cairn that it's very unlikely he's able to recover if he gets a little bit lucky. At that point, he would have to get extremely lucky to make up for it.
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty surprised that this Ancient of Lore chooses to draw 2 cards instead of healing 5 health, especially with the play that Kungen just made.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really get anything out of it. He doesn't know what he's going to draw, obviously, but still, it didn't work out that well. And yeah, I kind of agree because he does have such a strong hand that he doesn't really need the card draw at this point, and just kind of doing the heal seems like the safer play because he already has such a good mana curve. He already has all these high mana cost cards that he can be playing in these coming turns.
Right.
So definitely, I see what you're saying with that, and he is going to finish off that. The Cairn is going to come out from the battle cry, but that is death rattle. Excuse me. But it is looking really, really good here for Savjz. Regardless, I mean. It looks like he's going to go with the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Do you think he'll then innervate, swipe the face or something like that to kill that off?
A ton of options are available at this point. I actually don't think Swipe's coming out. I would imagine that Druid of the Claws. Touche. Yeah. Don't listen to what I say. I have no idea what Savjz is going to do apparently. Swipe to the face. This is still really good because actually this sets up lethal next turn. I like this play a lot because he's got not only Cenarius in his hand, which can beef up his other minions.
Yeah.
But he's actually just got lethal on the board.
Yeah. I mean, this is so brutal right now. And now he gets the Auctioneer. And he's going to have to work some miracles, man. He's going to have some real magic here if he wants to get something done. I mean, it kind of feels like he has to clear the board, so...
Certainly a possibility for it. This is a lot of cards that are going to be drawn.
I mean, he has 2 Eviscerates right here that he could clear 2 cards right there, but... how is he going to deal with the Cairn? I mean, there's a lot of different ways he could go about this, but he's already at 11 HP, and he's going to have to blow basically his entire hand to clear the board. So it's either way, I think he can clear the board here, but it's looking pretty brutal.
Well, I think at this point he can rule out the possibility of Force of Nature and Savage Roar, because not only is your opponent playing Auctioneer, but everything they've done at this point has been pretty clunky looking. So unless they're running 2 combos of it, which I don't see likely with a Gadgetzan Auctioneer, he feels pretty comfortable making these plays. I'm a little bit confused by how he's choosing to do this. I guess he's going to want to use the Blade Flurry first, which makes some amount of sense, but that opened him up to some possible counterplay. So Shiv, the Shiv is actually a pretty fortunate draw because it saves him an Eviscerate at this point.
Yeah, he is going to be
again, a lot of card draw coming out here. Kungen's actually looking pretty good in this game, I think, now. He's got Sap, he's got Sinister Strikes to keep digging through his deck.
That turnaround was pretty insane, man. He draws another Gadgetzan Auctioneer as well.
This is the power of Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Oh if
when he gets rolling, this is a huge card draw engine. I'm actually very surprised he chooses to not use the Sinister Strike here.
Yeah,
what that tells us is that he wants to save it for Malagos because he's worried about actually being able to finish his opponent at this point.
Now, I mean, there's the play here. What do you think? What do you think you go for? I mean, do you think you? Okay, so he's gonna go Ragnaros.
Wow,
he's gonna flip the coin, man. We'll see. I mean, now is the Ragnaros gonna? Okay, he's gonna go face. Oh man,
Senor Del Fuego is wasting no time. He wants to get this game over with. A second Sinister Strike. This is a pretty rough spot to be in when you're Kungen because.
Do you sap that? I mean,
I think that Sap is a really obvious play, but he's got a big Game Hunter in his hand as well. So he does want to establish pressure, but he also wants to keep drawing cards. We know that from Savjz's hand that he's actually got a Druid of the Claw in his hand. Yeah. So if Kungen doesn't manage to kill him this turn, this game's actually over.
Yeah. I mean, with that, I have to say that's pretty fortunate to hit the face in that situation, I think. But we'll see, man.
But that's part of the power that playing Ragnaros was here, because if it hit the Gadgetzan Auctioneer or it hit his face, he was kind of happy with either result.
Either way is fine.
So this is one of those spots where it looks like he may have gotten really lucky.
Well, if he Farseers himself, though, then he can't at least get lethal with just the Druid of the Claw.
Yeah, he's got the Mark of the Wild in his hand, too, though.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a pretty big combination of cards he's have, but again, he's dug so far into his deck that it's pretty likely that he ends up having something like that. And this is one of those spots where something like not having Shadow Steps could come back to hurt him, because if he could Shadow Step this Earthen Ring Farseer a couple times, he could actually put himself out of a couple of combinations of lethal range. But as it stands, it looks like this is going to be the end of it. Kungen can't put together enough damage to finish off Savjz this turn. And that's going to be GG. Game 3 going to Savjz.
Yeah, so he's not out of it just yet then. I mean, Kungen's taking his time just trying to figure out what exactly he can do here. And obviously he doesn't know
He's considering if he wants to backstab one of his own minions for the card draw at this point.
So many options.
But again, we know 2 preparations are gone as well. And there are no cold bloods in this list.
Yeah, there's really not many out. There's no outs left.
Let's go back and look at the Ancient of Lore turn, actually.
Yeah.
Since we are aware from this perspective that this game has ended because of Savjz's hand. He's got Mark of the Wild and he's got Druid of the Claw for charge. When he chose to draw 2 cards off of that Ancient of Lore rather than heal for 5, I mean, this is actually coming pretty close too, because the card draw may have mattered, but look how low he ends up being on life. He ends up being at 5 health.
Yeah, I mean, very close. But it's not going to matter, and Hearthstone is a game of inches oftentimes, man. It's so close.
But again, looking at it, it wouldn't have had... He also has the Faceless Manipulator. So much damage coming from Savjz this turn. And again,
It's the DM, man. He's going for the overkill.
Game 3, go into Savjz, and now when you're Kungen, the deck that you've gone 2-0 with has been taken down, but I still think you're pretty comfortable. You have, again, you have to win one of the next